so you know what is inside the institution, what is outside. The idea of institution comes from institutional economics. So if you want to look up the institutional economists, especially the old ones, the new ones, new institutional economists, all they do is they talk about money and they talk about transaction costs. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something much more holistic, which you find in the older institutional economists. So when we learn new concepts, the reason why I'm going over the same material again is that learning is not linear. You don't learn something, it's finished, and then you learn something else, it's finished, you learn something. Sometimes you have to reinforce, you have to relearn, you have to relook at something. And especially in philosophy, we're still looking at the old questions that were posed in 400 BC. They are still puzzles for us. So you look again at a question, you look again at a question, and each time you look with new eyes, you see new things. So learning for me is not linear, it's a spiral. It grows, and you go back and you reinforce. And this is what we're going to do today. So remember that the method for constructing the compass, I started with saying, what is an institution? And we decided to make compasses out of the Santiago River Basin area compared to the larger province of Jalisco. The reason why we want to study institutions as economists or as managers or as policymakers or as decision makers is that they influence us, but we influence them back. We can change them from the inside and we can change them from the outside. And there are feedback loops. And one of these learning spiral processes is a kind of feedback loop, right? So now when you look at the same material, you look at it with different eyes. It will have influenced how you see things. You will see things with a different eye than when you saw it the first day. Okay, next slide. The compass is meant to give us a sense of direction. It's a qualitative direction. So remember our three qualities. For any institution, there are two compasses, what we call a wish compass and an actual compass based on facts, what it is that we composed and we finished with the last time. An institutional compass can be used for policy decisions, critique of policy, to justify policy, because we go back to the tables, we explain, keep track of progress or failure of policy, right? If it's not working, we're going to keep hold of those statistics. We're going to update the information as it changes. It can be used to include more people in the policy-making process, making the institution more democratic. And we saw different ways in which we can include more people. It can be used to compare between the same institution at different times, or similar institutions, and even quite dissimilar institutions. So in any society, you're going to want some institutions that are discipline-oriented, a police force. You're going to want some prisons. You're going to need some sort of discipline. And that's their place. That's their contribution to the society. You're also going to want to have some harmony, some easy things that just go and they flow. Other things that are exciting. So, and each part of that whole river basin area is going to have its role to play in enforcing these different qualities. Adaptations of the institutional compass can be used to evaluate, serve as a nonlinear accounting device, and this will be talked about more in my father's talk in a few hours' time. Next slide. Yeah. So remember the three qualities. We had excitement, we had harmony, and we had discipline. And we discussed different ways of thinking about these terms and what it is that brings us from the edge between discipline and harmony. It's something that's kind of boring and sort of dull and, oh my God. you know, when it sort of tips over into this is really, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you can be bored to tears. You start crying because you're so bored. That's maybe a discipline at that stage. But if you're just bored, okay, I don't know what to do with myself, then it's still in harmony. And that's it. The guardian angel, the very soul. So next slide. And we also looked at these three qualities on three dimensions, three separate dimensions: economics, society, and environment. Because as ecological, from what I've learned from ecological economics is that you cannot, it's not a good idea to separate economics from society and separate it from the environment, that they include each other, they influence each other. And we cannot afford anymore now to continue to make our policy decisions only based on money. We can't do it. We've gotten into too much trouble, both socially and in terms of the environment. And therefore, we have to include all three. Okay, next slide. So remember, we decided, yeah.
The first dimension.
Yeah.
What is the energy? What dimension?
Energy?
Yes.
Yeah. So energy. Well, it is most obviously an environment because we use up coal, gas, and the non-renewable resources. Wood as well. So that's the physical part. But there's also a metaphorical notion of energy, right? So, but that's more difficult to deal with. But there's an energy in learning. There's an energy in knowledge, and that can be dissipated, and it can be lost, and it can become too chaotic. Yeah. So there's a metaphorical conception of this in society. There's also a conception of this in economy and money. You know, we use the words. We have a stimulus. I don't know, money, right? That's trying to get industry to. We're trying to light a fire so the industry comes. We provide. The government provides the infrastructure so that businesses can start up, and that becomes exciting. That notion of excitement also includes energy, right? So, but that's more metaphorical. It's not the physical component. But yes. So remember also that we talked about this notion of wish, and what we ended up with was many different wish spots. But I think that's because I did not explain the concept well enough, and we should have spent more time thinking about it until we reached more convergence. That was my mistake. So in the future, you must know not to spend enough time that people agree with that. And notice that the wish spot does not have to be in one quality only. It can be in two. It doesn't have to be a nice uniform oval. It can be on the side. It could even be in all three, because you might want a complete balance between all three qualities. Next slide. And then we turn to the idea of constructing an actual compass, where are we actually heading according to data, according to statistics, according to indicators, towards which quality. And an institutional compass indicates the direction of an institution in terms of the three general qualities. And this is where we ended up with last time. That was the institutional compass. It was in discipline, not too far from excitement. Next slide. The arrow of the actual compass is mathematically calculated from a number of data points, which are each analyzed as a data arrow or as an indicator arrow. So each data, remember we spent a long time, sometimes even an hour, discussing what's the angle and the length of this one datum, right? So it's an exhausting procedure, but it gets faster, it gets easier once you become used to the concept. It's very hard at first because you're learning to think in these qualitative terms, and the length is determined by what is the basis of comparison. What are you comparing it to? So that's usually not so complicated. And then we want to compare the actual compass to the wish spot. And that's how we make our policy decisions. Okay, next slide. So if the wish spot is somewhere different from where the arrow is pointing, we want to either reduce it in size and change the direction, or we want to swing it around. So we look back at the data. What is pulling the arrow in the wrong direction? What pulls it in the right direction? And policy is to encourage what pulls it in the right direction and discourage what pulls it in the wrong direction. So it's quite easy to understand why we make this policy and not this policy. Because you go back to the data and you say, this arrow is significantly pulling in the right direction. It's successful. We want to encourage it because obviously that's going well. Now there might be limit thresholds, etc. And we look at data that is pulling the arrow the wrong way, and we say that's what we want to discourage. So the representation is very intuitive. And so it becomes a good method of communicating your policy and justifying your policy. Okay, next arrow, next slide. So remember what we had to do. We had to find data about the institution. We had to look up data. We had to analyze the data, classify it in terms of the 3 dimensions. Is it environment, society, or economy? Classify it in terms of the 3 qualities. For each data point, we determine a length and an angle. And maybe we split or merge data. So we didn't do this, but sometimes there's a disagreement, wild disagreement over a data point. Some people say, no, 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 this belongs in discipline. And someone else says, no, this belongs in excitement. So then maybe you split the data and you say, according to these people, it belongs in discipline. According to those people, it belongs in excitement. You make it into 2 data points. The other thing you can do is, for example, there was a concern about, I don't know what it was, it was something that's right, that there are women that are carrying buckets of water into the household. There's a very, very small number of households that don't have plumbing. This, as a data point, is insignificant. It wasn't enough people. I mean, yes, we're concerned about them, but as a government policy maker, I'm not going to worry about this. But you can then merge that with other data points about this community. Maybe there are other things. They are living under the poverty line. Maybe there is more alcoholism. Maybe the children don't go to school. Maybe there's a lot of things. So something needs to be done about this community of people because they're attracting a lot of data points that together pull the arrow in the wrong direction. If that's the case, then policy should address them. So you can merge data points together if there's a kind of common element to all of them. It really forms a community of people. It's not that they are middle class and they have a car and they're doing just fine, but they have a choice that they want to actually go to the well. I don't know. They're just eccentric and weird, right? So it's not. So we want to find out if that's the case. Okay. Next slide, please. And then we also correct the length because we want to be able to have more data points in one sector than another sector. What we find when we're actually constructing compasses is that as you add more and more and more data points, they start to stabilize in a particular angle and a particular length, more or less, because they're just reinforcing each other. Because data is connected, things are connected to each other. And therefore, there's going to be some sort of convergence and there's going to be a stability that is reached. After this, you don't need to check more data points. It's not important. You need to get the outliers, the weird ones that are doing something strange, but eventually things start to converge. And so we correct by simply dividing the length by the number of data points in that sector. And that way I can have 20 in one sector and 3 in another one. You don't then get all this emphasis on this one particular quality. It doesn't mean the quality is more, it just means I have more data about it. That doesn't mean that that quality is actually more than the other ones. So again, we want a sort of balanced approach. That's the whole idea. Okay, next slide. And we made these tables, right? What was in the tables? We have a name, which should include the basis of comparison, right? We should know that, that should be in the background. The dimension, is it economic, social, or environmental? The quality, is it harmony, discipline, or excitement? The length, and this depends on the baseline, and the angle within the quality sector. And then we make our correction for the next. So that was our table.
I have two questions.
Yes.
In this project, there are one principal institution.
In our project,
Yes. No?
academic,
How many?
the main institution, the main group is the community, is the Sophia, and they are the cost.
What is the period? For the analysis?
The period,
Yes,
The time period.
the time period.
We have 3 years to do the project.
but the development of the project 3 years, 3 to 4 years.
Also, I don't know if you I think the compass allows us to bring all the institutions, right? The government, the social movements,
How many institutions? You know, only-
Well,
That- That's
depends.
exact,
It will depend. So we start out with our base, the big compass will be the Santiago River Basin area as a whole. And then we can choose, as you did, because you did some very nice work, finding out about particular institutions, particular economic thing. So then we can start to focus and say, well, maybe we need to look at a sub-institution, the city of Guadalajara, or a particular industry, or a bunch of industries, or the wastewater plants. Are they doing what they're doing? So then we would produce compasses about those. We have to guess which ones we want to target and which ones not. But first we make a whole compass. And then we look at the data and see, and then maybe we need to make sub compasses. Because for example, the waste treatment plants, I was told they're not working. That's not enough information, right? I need to know what's not working. Is nobody showing up to work? Etc. So we need to know more, and then we make a compass. But yes, thank you for the question. So we make these tables and we make compasses. Next slide, please. So I'm going to run through the mathematics again very quickly because that's something I did at home by myself. I'm really hoping there'll be a computer program that does it for me because it will be more accurate than my pencil and pen. So you plug the indicator arrows, next slide. You add them up within the sector, not just all adding them up willy-nilly. Next, you draw a line from the center of the circle to the end of the sector points. You erase the particular arrow, so I'm not interested in the details anymore. Next arrow, next one. Draw a triangle. The next. Draw a triangle between the 3 points. Next one. Erase the 3 lines. So we've gone away from our sector arrow. Next one. Find the center of the triangle, which is the average of all the points. Or again, if I'm doing an engineering triangle, this is where it would balance if it was a hard piece of paper or something. Next, we draw an arrow from the center of the circle to the center of the triangle, and this becomes our holistic arrow. But next line, erase the triangle lines, and the next one, you then correct for the fact that the triangle pulled everything in and it made it kind of small. And if you do a whole bunch of compasses, they all end up really small. So this is again to make it into a representation and to correct for the fact that I shrunk everything down. So, and now you use this is your holistic impression of what is going on, given the data that you used and so on. And now you can use this for communication. And you go back to communities, you say, I've done my homework, but maybe it's not complete. Maybe there are things I forgot in the data table. Maybe this is what you think is really going on. Then we have a discussion. Right? So this is round 2, is I bring it out to the communities and we discuss what's going on. Does this reflect? And maybe I've forgotten something. Okay, next slide. We use the compass for policy. So we compare the actual compass to the wish spot, once again. If the arrow in the actual compass is not in the wish spot, then we look back at the table. Policy is made to discourage data that pulls the actual arrow away and encourage data that pulls the arrow towards the wish spot, because that's a successful fix. So we want to encourage the successful fix. And remember the stories about the data. Remember, there were a lot of stories that came out. This is when we want maybe to make a sub-compass about a particular thing. We need to investigate further, because those stories contained a lot of data in them, but we didn't have the numbers yet. So we need the numbers as well. So policy is effective if we target the underlying causes, not the superficial data number. So we could be very superficial in our policy and say, oh, well, which is what has happened with the number of waste treatment plants, right? They said, oh, the water is not being treated, so we'll invest in more water treatment plants. That is superficial. It's deeper if we look into what are the underlying causes, what's really happening. Okay, next slide, please. I also wanted you to think about inclusiveness and democracy. Right? So the compass has many places where it's possible to include more people in the decision making. Even the words that we use for the qualities. So it would have, if you're especially talking to people who do not know English, we would have to translate it into the right words in Spanish or in other languages, right? And the placement and the size of the wish spot might be very different from one community to another. So this is something that bears discussion. It's a philosophical discussion. It's a discussion about who we are, where we want to be, what we would like, what is our vision, what sort of person are we? And there were some nice questions from people who were joining us remotely about what about different generations, different types of people? We're going to want different things. But if we're going to make a concerted effort to restore the basin area, we have to agree on a general vision. Then we can say, I'm going to play my part this way, in this quality. I'm going to play my part in this quality. But the general idea as a group of people who are trying to restore the basin, the general idea is to go towards a particular wish. If you're all wishing different things, it's very difficult to coordinate efforts. So, and it's a very general conception. And we update the table. This is round 2 of the compass. We have to update the table. We have to include more things, change them. And so this keeps track in real time about what's going on. And is the policy responsible? Is it doing what it should be doing? When we make policy decisions, we also have to decide on the time frame. What is a realistic time frame? But then we hold the institution accountable to that time. Okay, next slide. So the workshop. The purpose of the workshop was to give you an overview, to let you to become a little more familiar with the 3 qualities and the special type of data analysis.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if somebody can go with my father to help him with photocopying and with the slides. Is there someone who?
Tony, Professor Trent, you want your material to be presented, right?
Oh, yes.
So you can go with her and she can continue. Okay?
Okay, muy bien. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
Abby.
Muchas gracias.
Okay?
Hello, good morning. Aquí tengo una pregunta, ¿no? Acá de uno de los muchachos de Vallarta.
Ajá.
Se la voy a decir en español, a ver si le puedes resumir.
Okay.
¿Cuál podría ser la correcta interpretación del resultado gráfico obtenido?
What is the correct interpretation of the graphic result?
Y por otro lado, ¿deberá ser dirigido a cualidades o dimensiones?
On the other hand, what?
¿Deberá ser dirigido a cualidades o dimensiones?
Should it be directed to qualities and dimensions?
Independientemente de la versatilidad de la herramienta en general. Es decir, de manera específica este resultado obtenido.
So,
Independientemente de qué.
De la versatilidad de la herramienta en general.
so now I think,
Independently from the versatility of the tool,
Mhm.
would that be interpreted as what? La primera parte. Puede ser interpretado como
De manera específica este resultado obtenido.
on dimension, the dimensions and the qualities.
right. So again, what do? So we look at the actual compass where we're actually going, and we compare that to the wish spot. Is the compass where we're actually going where we want to go? And it's that comparison that tells us whether our policy is good policy or bad policy, or is justified policy. Now, it might be relatively good because there might be a lot of extenuating circumstances. There might be problems outside that are making things very difficult for the policy to succeed. But nevertheless, we have an idea of, is the policy bringing us towards where we wish to go or away from where we wish to go? That's how we decide on correctness. Now, which dimension that attacks, whether that has more to do with environment or more with society or more with economy, has to do with what are the long arrows that are pulling away from the wish spot, and what are the long arrows that are pulling towards the wish spot. The long arrows might belong in environment, they might belong in society, they might belong in economy. I don't know in advance. That's what we find out by looking at the table. The table tells us that there are some arrows that are long, some arrows that are short. The short ones are not significant. We don't worry about those. The long ones, then we worry about the direction. Is it a direction towards the wish spot? Is it a direction away from the wish spot? And they might belong in society, they might belong in economy, they might belong in environment. I don't know in advance. So we just find out that has to do with what's actually going on in the world. Not, we don't know that. It just has to do with the length, right? What are the long ones? And those are the ones that you pay attention to with respect to policy. So the purpose of the workshop was to get, does that answer the question?
Sí.
Okay. So the purpose of the workshop was to give you an overview, to let you become a little familiar with the three qualities of the data analysis. Over the holidays, so you're all going to have Christmas now, you can have a buñuelo. I offer you a buñuelo, please pass them around. Christmas holidays. And over the holidays, you will be with your families, you will be having a nice time, you will be enjoying yourselves, but I want you to think about these ideas. Don't let it go away. Think about the qualities, think about data. Hola. Bienvenido. think about the data analysis, because we're now going to be starting a very big project of the Santiago River Basin area. And in that, we're going to start lifting data. Well, I'm going to more or less use the data other people are, because there'll be a lot of scientists, there'll be a lot of data. We're using that data, but we'll be wanting to analyze it in terms of the three qualities. We'll be wanting to categorize it. I also want you to think in terms of inclusiveness. How do we bring people to help us with the collection of data and help us with the analysis of the data and help us with policy decision making? And I want you to be creative. The compass is something I have now bestowed to you. I have given it to you. Use it. It's a very flexible, very interesting tool. And it has many more possibilities than what I have talked about in the workshop. I've mentioned a few things. There's a lot of games we can play. It's actually quite flexible. So that, for those of you who have signed up for a copy of the book, you will see it in the book that there's quite a lot of stuff we can play with. And in January, we start to analyze data that is collected and we enter it in a big table, right, for the whole of the Santiago River Basin area. And then when we talk about specific policies and targeting things, that's when we might make a smaller compass about a particular area. What are the waste treatment plants? What are they doing and not doing? Okay, last slide. So I'll see you next year with your data. Yeah, all ready to make the analysis, because now you've understood how to make the analysis. This is my email address. If anybody wants to contact me, or you can contact me through Salvador. And I would just like to thank you so very much for coming to this workshop, for learning these ideas. And I hope that you will find them useful and interesting in the future, and that you can use them yourselves. So thank you. Gracias. Okay.
Bueno,
Yes.
Muchas gracias.
Did you inspire in your father's work of the sage beat for this, or it comes together? How does?
Yeah, this is something we're debating.
Yeah.
So I think, I personally, we'll wait for his talk for that question. What he and ecological economists have inspired me to do is to make sure that I include data about the environment and society and economy together. I don't ignore society and environment. He wants a sort of accounting system. He wants it to be non-linear. So it's called non-linear. That is, there's not just one measure. And I think that I have a type of accounting system, but he's not too sure that does. His idea of accounting is that you separately keep accounts of the entropy production.
Yeah.
So that's his sort of, instead of money, it's entropy that becomes the center of his thinking. And entropy both physically and metaphorically. And so in society, entropy is not going to be the energy that we use as much as metaphorically what's going on. And in the economy, it's not going to be physical energy that we're talking about as much as we are metaphorically talking about money that stimulates growth. And is the growth energetic, or is it just kind of going quietly? Or is there degrowth, right? Is it spiraling down? So his conceptions are a little bit different from mine, and we're merging them. We're trying to work out exactly how to do it. So, but we'll be doing both in the big project. We'll be doing
Exactly,
both
that's
things.
why I asked, because at some point we have to unite this.
Well, not necessarily. What we can have are different, because we're going to have many tools
Right.
of assessment and evaluation. We don't have to push them all together.
Maybe like two visions.
That's right. And then we can see which ones, this is good science, is not to say we have to force them together before we know the results. We keep them separate. We start to learn, maybe this is better, maybe this is good for this kind of idea, this is good for that sort of idea. The economic tools, we have them already. They're very good for economic solutions. You know, why we don't need to throw a whole compass, blah, 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 on top of that. But for environmental problems, the economy is not very well suited, you see. So we're going to run all this stuff in parallel. People have different expertise. And then we'll start to dance between them and see what's happening.
Yeah, probably, if I may just take a couple of minutes
Yeah.
to explain this, what you're saying. See, the idea is that we have, we participate with the people of El Salto, with the community. And we presented a project that has, we are like the tool team. We're going to help the project by organizing information in many ways for the community to use and to learn and to do public policy and whatever they do. So in this sense, we have a very specific economic tool, which is the evaluation of ecosystem services. And that's one methodology. Then we have another tool, which is a geographic information system. So basically, it's like a description and a dynamic description of the performance of the different categories in the basin. And these tools are the most important of the whole set, because they kind of integrate all that information and allow in an easy way, very accessible, very easy to understand how they interact and how they conform a whole bunch of data that is very difficult to understand from any specific field. It allows you to understand the whole picture and to design public policy. So this is a set of tools that will help people to understand what's going on and where do they want to go. And
what are the recommendations? Why do we make these recommendations?
Exactly. See, because as Michelle was saying, there are lots of multi-criteria models in the world. There are many. So this is not new in that sense. The new feature here is that it tells you, it gives you the insight of how to approach reality. Because the other one is just, this you have just like a picture, Most of them are very difficult to understand because there is a lot of mathematics involved.
There's too much information.
Too much information.
And then you don't know, should I tackle CO2 emissions, or whether I should clean the water, or whether I should tackle poverty, and you don't know which one to prioritize. It's impossible to know.
And the other thing that is relevant, from my perspective, the most important, is that the public participation in the camp is what you see the people from the Salto got it immediately.
Yeah.
But they say this is not good if it's not in the community. So we have to go to the community.
Right.
And I think that's a particular feature of this model, because the other models can be constructed outside the social reality.
That's right.
Because the only thing they need is data, right?
You go on your computer, you find the data tables, and you make your little models. But this, the democratic part is very important, and people on the ground see things differently from how you see things in your office. And the data tables are not complete. And that's why it's important to go to the communities and ask them, what do you see? And enter that into the data table. So then we have, it's the difference between having a map that tells you where the roads are, but not where the rivers are, not where the mountains are, and having a map that tells you where the rivers are, where the mountains are, where the roads are, where the houses are. You know, we want a complete map. And then some things will not be significant and they get sort of erased, but they're kept or they're crossed out until they start to be, the numbers start to show up and do something.
And the other thing, sorry.
No, I just wanted to add that this confirmed you with this really philosophical question of where we want to go,
Yes,
which direction we want to take, right?
that's right.
And the other day I was saying, Michelle, she was saying, I want to plant some seeds. No, you start a fire because people from the community, as you said, take this information really quickly. It's a really good way to put the complexity into an illustration. That's the really humble way to show the complexity to the people of these communities, and they take it really quickly.
That's right.
And the other step is to them to really internalize this.
That's right.
Propose to
That's
give
right.
data, and the data will give us more information on
Exactly.
who is involved.
Exactly. And that's the work of the wish spot.
Yeah.
That's a philosophical exercise. And it makes people used to those three qualities. It introduces those three qualities and what do they mean? What do they really mean in terms of my life, in terms of the community? The policeman doesn't want to just be they don't just want to be arresting people. What they want is to protect the society so that the rest of society can do its job. They will play their role in order for the society to do its job.
Yeah, and the other feature that impressed me of the tool is that it takes you away from the good and the bad.
That's
You
right.
know, this
This is very important.
bipolar way we understand things. This is very important for us because we are now in a very divided moment in our society,
Right.
and everybody's finger pointing everybody, and everybody's blaming everybody. And the fact that you can make trade-offs and understand that people are doing what they're doing because that's what they can do, and not because they are necessarily evil or crooked.
Nothing is good and bad,
Exactly.
absolutely. It's only good, it's good for one person, bad for someone else. The narcos, they're bad for a
Turn it
lot.
up, turn it up.
The narcos do some good, I'm sorry.
No, I'm recording this so I can't stop.
So, but I want to talk to them. I want to talk to them. I want to find out. I want to talk to the narcos because I want to.
She's from Sinaloa, where this thing is very common.
Yeah.
Let's talk about narcos.
The narcos do parks and schools and roads.
They are like, they do social service.
Exactly.
They
So
are
they're
part-
not completely evil. They're not devils. They do some good things. And if they want their image to be better, they can do other good things. We can even point them in the right direction as to what are the effective things to do that will help them to make their image better.
Yeah.
Where they end up and how it all works out in the end, that's a separate problem. But
When we were talking about this, it was like, I have this notion of good and bad, about narcos. And Michelle told me, well, let's give them some seeds to plant. Let's give them, déjenlos plantar árboles, ¿no? Entonces es como que, pues sí, el hecho es que given the opportunity to look well to society in that, and they just keep doing what they do because we can do anything about it right now, right?
that's right.
If we try to stop it, what we're gonna do? Start another war with them?
And someone will fill in the vacuum. You stop one group,
Exactly.
another group will come.
But
So-
just think about this. In Mexico, to plant and to to sell and to deal with marijuana puts you in jail. And in Vancouver, you can drink, smoke, plant, and do whatever anywhere you want. So we're putting the crime, we're putting the dead people, and Canadians are enjoying marijuana. So
Yeah.
where is the good and where is the bad there? You know, like things like that are all over, like the perception of what happened in the United States in the Prohibition era with alcohol and things like that. It's just these concepts of good and bad. I mean, if you don't go to the extremes, right? Because they also do very bad things. They kill people, they kidnap people. I gather that this is a
Yes.
separate issue.
Right.
But the problem of narco business and the hemispheric problem of narco business is totally outdated the way we are looking at it, because it's not reality. It doesn't
That's
show the real what's going on in society.
And we try to invisibilize that they are moving economy too.
Exactly. That's the
And
reality.
it's like, they are part of it too
That's right.
in Mexico.
That's right.
Let's
There's a lot of money
let's
moving around.
tax them.
Exactly.
And with that
exactly.
money, we can fund our health system.
Exactly. I mean, look, this is what Berlusconi understood in Italy many years ago about the ports, right? So a ship would come in and they would bribe the people so that the goods would go past the port more quickly. He had the very good idea that everybody knows how much to bribe. So just make it official. This is fast track, this is slow track. You pay for the fast track and we tax it. It didn't actually work, but it's a very bright idea. Why not? Anyway, but these are good discussions to have, you see. These are discussions that should be had in the society if society is ready. The compass will help to make people more ready because they stop people thinking in terms of good, bad, neutral.
That's right.
They think in terms of exciting, harmony, discipline. And that's not good and bad in itself. We need some discipline. We need some excitement, not too much. We need some harmony, not too much. We need discipline, not too much. We need between the things. And these are deep existential philosophical discussions. And since I'm a philosopher, I'm not afraid of having those discussions. But this is why philosophy, we're in a very hard situation now as a species on the planet, and we can't afford to ignore it and say, oh no, I have a model, it's okay, I can do my academic work and we have our solution. It's not working, it hasn't worked. We have to rethink things in a very deep way, and we should do it sooner rather than later, because the later we do it, the worse it's going to be. That's all. Now, I don't mind, you wait as long as you want to, but I'm giving you a tool that helps you to do that, helps you to draw out those questions in a way that is less emotional. Because when you have to think in terms of these three qualities, it's intellectually hard. So you put all your energy into your brain space, take it away from your gut. And so then as you're reflecting and trying to think about these concepts, then all that emotional stuff goes away because you're intellectually working the idea. And then you can think in a cold way about what is happening. And then you go back into your emotion afterwards if you want to, but that's, it's a separate thing. And having that intellectual remove, that moment when you're trying to understand something, this helps us to face the very difficult questions, because those questions are very emotional too. Who do we want to be? Where do we want to go? Why are we doing it? How are we going to get there? Can we work together to do this? Or is it going to be impossible to work together? So.
Porque there is a question of Griselda,
No, no está Griselda.
pero dejo una pregunta.
And
Okay.
and it's really hard to work collectively in this video.
It's very hard. It's very hard,
Sometimes
and
we
that's
even
why,
private to-
of course,
to
of course.
question this with a lot of people, right?
That's right. And that's why that remove is very important, because then all of that emotional, yeah, but I hate this person because he lives across the street and his place is terrible, I don't like it, and I hear all this noise, or whatever it is that's bothering me about my neighbor. Here we're talking about what's the vision? What's the overall vision? And let's stop with the stupid little petty arguments. Let's get somewhere that makes sense for all of us together.
Okay, we should